Look at what they've achieved against some of the N18s, beating TSM, beating SSG, did lose out to Oxygen, but have shown they can stand up there and compete with the best. And here, you're stacking up against the best from APAC, who, on paper, we can talk about what we spoke about quite a lot last week. Excellent entry stats, Cloud9, the best in the competition, but when it came to closing out rounds, they so often fell short. And over the weekend, they're taking a bit of time to sit down and have a conversation about that round closing caliber they've got. This could turn out to be a very different game.
Really could. Now we're heading through the operator banning stage. We've got Hibana and Nomad going by the wayside on the side of the attackers. Mkers will come in with their first defensive ban here, and it will be Valkyrie. Not too unusual, full stop really, but not too unusual here on Coastline either. A few very useful outdoor cams particularly, and one or two that can be helpful inside of the map as well. So that information denial coming in from Mkers, and Cloud9, they're going to take Mira out of the way as well. Nothing too unusual there, Des. Hibana, we saw as a staple ban for a little while on Coastline. It's not always as nailed on anymore, but Hibana's particularly useful from the rooftop to open up an angle from the quad wall, just getting a view down behind the bar to prevent the smoke player just sitting in there when it's a hooker and billiards defence. So that's the thought process likely behind the Hibana ban now, but you've got Ace as an option as well. He can do that from distance.
I feel like there's two target bans coming out here from Cloud9, the Hibana and the Mira, something that we saw Mkers play in their game against SSG. For Cloud9 in their game against Empire, didn't play Valkyrie or Nomad. So for me, it feels like a comfort thing coming out of Mkers, saying, look, these are two operators we just really do not want to deal with, so let's get them off the board. Don't give Cloud9 the opportunity, and see how things boil down from there. There will be a temporary pause until we get into it now that those operator bans are complete. I believe there may be a technical issue with one of the machines. Underdogs. I think the War of the Underdogs is what I called it, because you look at these two teams, you probably look at Parabellum as well, and you'd be saying, oh, underdogs in the tournament weren't expected to do very well last week, but they've made it into playoffs. And we, from the UK, love an underdog story. You just never know what to expect coming out of these boys. Look at Parabellum again on day 2, bringing down some real giants, beating NIP and SSG, the world champion and the runner-up of last year, all in the same day. You just don't know what to expect, but between these two, it's going to be heartbreak at the end of this series. For now, though, we're kicking things off on hookah and billiards. In terms of setup pace, anything screaming out to you that's worth talking about?
At this point, we're fairly stock standard in terms of those defender choices. We do have the Goyo, which is not necessarily sort of a completely stock every single time pick, but to be fair, very useful. We can see those deployable shields just being placed to play onto that hooker balcony door there. So generally, you're going to have almost every single time this site is defended, you will have a player playing at the top of the cool stairs.
I haven't seen this in a while. This is interesting, where you reinforce the aqua hatch, you stick a shield on top of it, and normally what you then get is electrification on it as well, so it can't be destroyed from below, but I guess here, not really a concern, so they are going to dig in deep. This could be interesting. Sometimes it falls completely on their face, like gets naded out, for example, and you're pinned in the corner of Aqua. You can't run back into sight, for example. You just completely pinch it in. So I'm keen to see how long that's used, if used at all. Cloud9 is something a little bit different, though. Nova, normally the support player for this team, being the one to stack up right against the lobby door and look to give Mkers something to think about on their entry into the building.
Well, I mean, looking at that Aqua hatch, Des, obviously, there is the option on the side of Mkers to deal with that reasonably easily. They've got Sasha on the ace. Shouldn't be required for too much more. As I say, maybe looking to open up that quad wall for the angle onto the smoke, but you only need 1 Selma charge for that. 2 will destroy a hatch, so if Sasha could get off this nice and quickly, it is possible to dislodge MV Taylor reasonably easily from underneath, but he will need to be careful of Nova on the Malusi, who is in there just looking to make a nuisance downstairs. But for the time being, Sasha has gone in on the ace and used one of those Selma charges on the VIP wall. Now, it's an interesting angle that we don't always see used too much anymore from the attackers, but the reason that they're doing that is it just gives a great line of sight from VIP all the way into sight, all the way to the billiards table. It cuts the sight in half, and it makes it very difficult for the defenders to rotate in and around the site.
I know about this one sat now right in the back corner. I believe it's MV Taylor holding this one down. Captain MV sat in the spot. No, that isn't a special skin for the attachment. I believe it's just a placeholder. Either way, he's going to have to work some magic because he is being pressured by 2 or 3 members here. They could burn him out with grenades, and like I say, he's then got absolutely nowhere to go, so dug himself in without an angle out. That can cause you problems. However, we have burnt about 1 minute and 45 seconds here, Ace, for Cloud9. They've burnt through that clock well. Mkers currently being stalled out at this back corner. That should be MV getting blown out. Here we go. They're going to run. It's going to be the Iana clone coming in first, one coming in from Luggage, all too easy to clear him out. Lolo picking up the first kill in this series.
Taylor not really making the best challenge for me onto that. It was a little bit sort of half-hearted, still getting into the ADS as standing up. Didn't really feel like he was ready to challenge. Now, Mkers, they're ready to challenge Harper as they manage to down the Goyo, and that leaves them effectively 5 versus 3 at the minute. I'm not sure there's going to be an opportunity for Cloud9 to collect the Goyo at this point. Indeed not, as Akwi will finish him off with a frag grenade there. Sasha gets Shiol as well. No, Harper has been collected, I apologise. He is the last man standing. 20 HP, tries to make a round of it, but can't, Des. It's a flawless round for Mkers. What a start for the Italian team.
I love Cloud9, but that was a weak round. Really, really weak. Barely aware of where they were being pushed from, being grenaded from below, being cleared out without challenge inside of Aqua. One man with no idea where he's being pushed from, wasn't even looking the right way at the round end. That was just chaos from start to finish. And for Mkers, yeah, well played. Won your gunfights, got your utility and excellent, well done. For Cloud9, messy and scrappy, barely competitive in that round. Need to see that change coming into round 2. I don't want to point at the map and say, oh, it's Coastline, it's not a Cloud9 map. There are no maps that you can get away with really avoiding here once you get into playoffs. You get that one ban, sure, but they have played this map before. They know how to do it, just a scrappy first round. Let's see how things progress as we go further into the defensive half.
Round number 2 then, we'll see us heading back to Hooker and Billiards once again. Cloud9 setting up in largely a similar fashion, except they've got the Maestro this time instead of a Goyo, so they're not going to be playing the deployable shields. I don't think we're going to see them employ the shield setup inside of Aquades, primarily because they don't really have many shields. They've just got the one on static, and I'm guessing that Hooker door would be more of a priority than would the Aqua corner, just because they didn't really get any value out of it at all. They had 2 ADSs in there, they had Wamai magnets, they had a deployable shield, they had a reinforcement, and that's quite a lot of utility really to stack up into Aquarium, especially when Taylor basically just gets removed out of there without any significant challenge being made onto the attackers. So I think it's best to let that one go, write it off as a bad job, and just try to deploy that utility elsewhere.
It's a key thing around mentality and not letting that now bleed into the rest of the round. You go for a reset. Nova very, very narrowly getting away with that one, I think. Could have maybe been picked off and the run across, but unfortunately, Mkers just a smidge too late to the action, it feels. Now it's back to Wayne, now kept himself a bit further away from the door, but looking to contest still from the hallway down into lobby. And Envy's looking to join him a little bit on the roam. Not going to see that same setup as last time round, I think, after how that went out. Very understandable. Let's not try it again.
So 1 minute into the round nearly. Mkers again just on the roam clearance, getting the drones out there, looking to get themselves established inside of the map. They were a little bit ahead of themselves in round number 1. They'd already got themselves into VIP and opened up that long angle through to sight, which I'm not sure they've achieved just yet, although Gemini does seem to have got himself established. There we go. Sasha, thank you very much. About 20 seconds behind this time, getting that onto the VIP wall. So the same angle will be opened up, suggesting a very similar push here coming in from Mkers, although this time Akwi gets himself up onto that Hooker balcony, looking to just apply pressure through onto the angle. Now, is he aware of Nova downstairs? Needs to be very careful here because the Malusi could potentially find an angle up onto that balcony. He's not going to be challenged for the time being. Halfway into the round, still 5 versus 5. I like the pacing from Mkers, Des. They're not throwing bodies into the fray here. They're happy to wait until the opportunities come their way, and they're not losing the early deaths.
No, there's no need to get too scrappy with it, right? More playing behind the utility to begin with, clearing out what they need to, and then worrying about taking the gunfights onto people. Harper's been playing on cool vibes the whole time, by the way. Had a couple of frags thrown towards his general direction, but I think both bounced down behind the sofa inside a hookah, so not really too concerned about that. But at least this round's been better for Cloud9. No one's died early. They've responded well to when there has been aggression being shown. Okay, let's back away here, make sure we've got eyes on the angle. Shiol standing close. Again, no idea, it seems, with that angle from the window. That one is textbook Siege. That's one that you should know about.
Nova just managing to get that opener. Shiol shut down, losing Akwi, and that leaves us now 1-0. Mkers 4-3 in the round here as Taylor takes an advantage. 30 seconds left to go. Out comes the Toxic Babe canister, and that is going to be the Gemini drone just moving in there to gain some information. If you're wondering why it wasn't taking any damage from that Toxic Babe, Gemini manages to find the kill onto Taylor. That gives Mkers a late advantage, but there's the 6th man. Let's not forget, Des. Cloud9 have got the time on their side here. Static gets killed. Harper last alive once again. 1 versus 2. The clock is not going to matter as Scato starts to get the diffuser down. The plant will not be successful as Lolo manages to find that kill in the 90 corridor just before it does get confirmed, and that's going to be Mkers taking round 2. Cloud9 need to be very careful here, Des. This one could run away from them.
Cute little play as well with the Gemini drone coming out from the Iana, jumps over the wall, distracts the Maestro, guy swings from hookah window straight away and puts a bullet in his skull. Good round from Mkers once again. A couple of key mistakes again to touch on from Cloud9. I mentioned the one coming in from the hookah window. Your stepping angle of that doorway, that guy is absolutely going to blast you to high heaven, and sure, they may have got the trade, but still not one that you want to be losing that early in the round. And there's that angle once again. The peak comes out as well for the trade. That could have been a quick 2K coming out if they weren't too careful, but thank God Nova was able to adapt in time, and from there we saw it went a little bit more chaotic as things kind of bled on.
Cloud9 have got me panicking about my predictions at this point, Des. I did go in for Cloud9. It was for me it was one of the more difficult games of the day, and I just thought I'm gonna hedge towards experience, but it's also the one where I know not so many people will select it, and I always try to avoid us all picking the same. So I thought I'm just gonna go in there. I think that might be like the sort of the upset of the day, but we are true to form at the minute. Mkers coming out and looking extremely good here. They're certainly looking better than their station in the overall grand scheme of Siege, not being inside a Challenger League yet. I'm sure that is just a matter of time, you would think, looking at their performances so far. I can't, I can't heap enough praise onto Mkers really, and they are showing us plenty of that skill and ability here at the beginning of round number 3. 2-0 on Coastline.
And when they first rocked up in the SI quals and started bodying a couple of teams from the top level, everyone was like, okay, what's going on here? Then they got up against Na'Vi and Tempera, who were two teams that were already qualified into the closed bracket stage, and beat both of them. They were some wild games, and they surprised us from start to finish. But the big question that hung over their head was, can they now go and do the same on LAN? Can they deliver to the same level? And I think especially for players like Akwi and Lolo, the two big players that we've seen really going off in the groups last week, the answer absolutely is yes. But a couple of big results against big teams in a best of 3, that is where experience, I think, is really going to come in for those larger teams, and you might start seeing a little bit of difference between the two. However, I will very happily be surprised by any underdog any day of the week.
Oh, I'm absolutely here for it, Des. I absolutely love it. You know, the last thing that I want to do is to be able to come into this tournament, come into these playoffs and just write down all the names in a bracket and get it all right.
Yeah.
You know, there's absolutely no fun in it. We want some upsets. We want spanners thrown into the works. We want it to just be an absolute mess in some ways and really be surprised by it. Now, still 5 versus 5. We've got the Goyo brought along once again. This time the utility being used to try and keep hold of Penthouse for the time being and just prevent that push coming in from Mkers. But once again, they deal with it extremely well. As we can see, Harper forced away there. His utility burnt in front of his eyes. He's flashed out. It's all he can do to escape, and it's not even that, Des. The drone will see that he's down, and the kill will come in. Scato managing to finish things off for Mkers. It's another opening kill for the Italian side, and they are looking strong.
Their early round is great. It doesn't matter what Cloud9 are preparing for them. They are dealing with it expertly, dodging the potential C4s from below, scaring Cloud9 into trying to retreat back through open angles. The doorways from there, for example, always going to be able to see that from the sofas inside of Penthouse. They make it look easy at the start of these rounds, and C9 not finding any of those opening kills that did them so much work last week and gave them a good chance in a number of rounds. Here, they're the ones bleeding out early in the round, and already with a 5 versus 3 and 60 seconds to play, you're feeling like Mkers should take this one.
Certainly are. Now, Akwi, he's going to stack up on that service door. The site, of course, being kitchen and service. If the man takes the peak here, he's going to lose his head, Des. There you go. Absolutely called it. Nova completely shut down. Easy for Akwi as he gets 2 kills.
So easy.
What a headshot through to Shayo. Shuts the man down. Sasha's getting the diffuser down on the ground. It was a matter of time, Des. 1 versus 5. Another flawless round. That's 2 out of 3 for Mkers here. And boy, oh boy, do they look hot on Coastline.
You say hot on Coastline. I think Akwi was cool as a cucumber. No panic in his crosshair. Just sat there like, bam. Next guy to the left. Oh, guess what? He's going to peek to the left in 2 seconds' time. Bam. Second kill comes through. It was textbook. It was clean. It was calculated. It was cool. Mkers 3-0 up and making this look like a bit of a cakewalk, so you could understand and sympathise with Cloud9 if they choose to take a timeout. That's exactly what they've done, because, my God, have they got to have a conversation.
That kill from Akwi, you could just see it coming a mile off, couldn't you?
I love those. When they're orchestrating, you just see, whoop, one
You really
shot
could
comes through.
see it coming from a mile off, and it was one of those where you see somebody's about to like trip up, or you see an accident about to happen, and you can't look away from it.
You just know because of the outline. You're like, okay, just wait for it.
You just know that there's nothing that you can do to stop it happening, but you know that it's gonna.
I hate using the word sheesh, but it is one of those moments.
It's a rough start for Cloud9.
Very, very rough start. Beautiful though. And the reverse angle, the second kill that we saw back on the replay there, didn't see in the round itself. One of those is Cloud9. You need to be winning those. It just looks like they're half a second behind what it is that Mkers are bringing along here, and that's why they're walking out on top. However, I'm pretty sure this timeout is nearly done. You have your 60 seconds. You can have your conversation. Your coach can step in, offer some words of wisdom, help reset the mental if things are absolutely fragmented in the team. Cloud9 are getting out of the map. They are trying to make things happen, but it's just looking unstructured, and that is where Mkers are taking the advantage. However, timeout is over. We are into round number 4. It's going to be a blue bar and sunrise defense. And a couple of changes coming out of us, seeing the Alibi and the Ella step into the field.
The major problem, Des, Cloud9, even taking a timeout at this point, is, you know, let's be honest, they've struggled in the first 3 rounds. They've only got 3 kills out of a potential 15. Obviously, 5 kills per round available, 15 over the first 3 rounds, and they've only managed to get 3 secured on the board, and that is a problem. They've only got 20% of the available kills. So Cloud9, like you say, they need, I don't know what's going to have been said during that tactical timeout there, but it needs to have been some strong words, Des. It needs to have been something to fire them up to start getting some kills here, because like I say, this one is going to be over before they know it. We've seen it a couple of times through the group stages. Oxygen did it to a few teams looking like they were on an any percentage speed run getting through there. We saw games over in 26 and 29 minutes, and this is the sort of game that could go that way if Cloud9 don't dig their heels in and start getting a few kills. I'm looking towards Shiol, I'm looking towards Invitational, players that we know are more than capable of finding them. Right now, they just keep getting found out. They just keep getting found in the wilderness and picked up easily.
Again, they are trying. They have got like one playing in Penthouse, they have one playing below on the vertical angle, they have one inside a theatre, so they had the intent, but the delivery simply wasn't there. And ideas are a dime a dozen, execution is what counts. Let's see then if that timeout has had any real impact. Again, you're still seeing them out in the map. Envy roaming upstairs with the shield committed to the top floor as well. 1 inside a kitchen to greet their guests on their entryway into Coastline. It's all good greeting them, but you need to actually put a bullet in their head and say thank you for showing up and thank you for the round if things can progress that way. Pool entrance going to be the focus. In comes the nade, removes that mute jammer that was...
Let's go!
Okay, I mean, that was a cheeky one. We'll take those. It's a start, boys. Now what more can we turn into it? Interestingly, their only opening kill in the last 4 rounds as well.
Great start coming in for Cloud9 there, getting a nice kill for Nova in from behind that deployable shield, and it excited me, Des. I get on board with that one because I want to see this turn into a match. I don't want this being a run over, no matter which team it is that needs to find their way back into it. I just hope that they are able. Nova finds himself a second. Sit down, Akwi. What a great double kill from Nova. He's absolutely dominating that pool entrance door at the minute, and Mkers, they just don't have an answer for him inside of that position now. Shiol's holding a cheeky angle there, just looking to find himself a kill if anybody tries to push towards that kitchen door or potentially the poolside window that we can see through our screen on Lolo's point of view there. Now, Gemini's going to try and push himself into service, but he's going to be shut down through the soft wall. Will be down. I'm not sure that Cloud9 are just aware yet. They sort of tentatively take the peek, and that's the angle from Shiol, but it's completely shut down by Lolo on the reverse angle there. There's 4 versus 2 coming into the final minute, and we might just have the first round on the board for Cloud9.
Oh, you can't be missing those, Shiol. They're absolute sitters. The guy isn't even aware that you're there at the window, and you miss your shots. He flicks onto you and brings you down. That's one you'll be kicking yourself for. Shiol, a player that was an absolute god throughout 2020, had a really poor stage 1, and we said last week he needs to show up here at the groups if Cloud9 are going to do well. He was the top-rated player on the team, 1.10 I believe he ended, had a good showing, but where he stepped up, other members went a little bit quiet, and that is always going to be a problem. But right now it's Mkers with a problem. 25 seconds to go in a 2 versus 4. Nova, he's just clicking heads for fun this round with that SMG. Speak about the laser beam with the SMG. 4 kills, 4 headshot. The man has flown in that round.
Great round from Cloud9 there. They did exactly...
From Nova, let's not beat about the bush.
They did exactly the right thing towards the last 30 seconds. I was just going to say, you could see from the silhouettes, they'd all just pushed themselves back deep into the site, and they were just ready to hold angles. They had a man on Cool Vibes stairs, they had the crossfires established, and it was all down to Mkers to try and get in there and to aggress in. And in a 2 versus 4, it was always going to be difficult. It puts a round on the board for Cloud9. And Des, how many times have we seen this from Cloud9 inside of APAC? They come out and they have a slow start. It's sort of almost like their MO, really. They just come in, and that is how they operate. They're just really slow for those first 3 or 4 rounds, and then they wake up and they come back into it. But there is still a significant gap between what we've seen from these 2 teams right now. Mkers are looking good, Des. They're looking sharp. They're hitting the shots. And for me, they've certainly been the better of the 2 teams inside of the first 4. The question that will be answered in the next couple of rounds is whether that is where Cloud9 wake up.
A bit of a technical pause coming out here again. Another issue to address. Once that is done, we will get back into things once more. It's a nice promising time. I think good to have the little pause if you're on the side of Cloud9, just to have the conversation again. Right, things are going right now. And no doubt on Mkers' side, okay, how can we crush this uprising? We were absolutely dominating. We've had a small setback. Let's crack on and make this a 5-1 half here, given how good we were in the first couple of rounds. I almost want to start calling those cheeky little one-taps with guns, just like the Acqui. After we saw it in the earlier round, Nova had a couple of them in that round, a couple of sprays through walls or through doors, got him a couple of kills back, but it's always nice to see.
Heading into round 5 very shortly then. Mkers are 3-1 up, and if you've only just joined us, it's fair to say that the European side are flying at the minute, although Cloud9 have just clipped their wings there in round 4 as they managed to hold out and get themselves a round on the board, which is their first successful defence, and it came inside of Blue Bar and Sunrise. They've so far lost Hooker and Billiards twice in round 1 and 2, and they also lost Kitchen and Service in round number 3, so need to show us something different heading through 5 and 6. I think if Cloud9 come away with a 2-4 half here, Des, I don't think they're going to think that's the end of the world.
No, you'd obviously be praying for a lot better, but given this isn't your map pick that you stepped in here on the defensive side as well, I think hat raised that it's a 52% split, pretty much bang on as far as maps go in the current meta that we're in. Interesting when you think about how it used to be very, very attacker leaning, and at least here it's been quite balanced between the 2 sides, quite a swing back, I suppose, if you look at it that way. Either way, just as a quick update, we are indeed waiting on this technical pause to be completed. And as I say that, the clock keeps ticking. Caster hit the big red start game button, which means things get back underway. And looks like we're stepping now into Hookah and Billiards once again. The Maestro being present on Harper once more. Let's hope this time around they can tell the tales from the toes, because in that previous round, they would just be they would punching smoke, chasing ghosts. Acqui and Co. literally had their number all the way through, so something has got to change this time round, Tim.
Nova, as you say, having a big round. He's 5 and 3 now, so that just drags that kill amount up. I commented on it coming into that round that there just weren't enough kills on the board for Cloud9. They were just losing out in every single gunfight. Mkers were just really dominating in that area, but things look slightly more promising. Envy Taylor's got himself a couple on the board as well, but they just need to make sure that that continues if Cloud9 want to find anything here now. Mkers, for my money, they just need to keep on walking, Des. They've come in here strong. They've really had the advantage in all but one of the rounds. They've not rushed in to the opening gunfights. They've got themselves established nicely inside the map, and then they've always tried to take them in an advantageous position. They've tried to find those roamers. They've tried to locate and just sort of section out players that they can then just bully and find the kills onto. And if that continues, it's going to be a tough day for Cloud9.
Absolutely could be. And the thing is, for Cloud9, nothing really changing in terms of the way they're set up. They had Envy above Nova in the previous round, or the previous time they were here. You had Nova himself hanging around White Stairs, around lobby, looking to contest the front door. So on Mkers' side, they're starting to catch on to habits here, or have looked back at a couple of Cloud9's old games. Chances are they've got a very good read on what the setup is and what is going on. Harper, they've got his number. Acqui just knows. Look at this. It's like going to some, like, Welcome back to Six Invitational 2021. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, as you can tell, there was a power issue at the venue. Really appreciate your patience and for sticking with us. With all that resolved, things can now crack on, and we will give you an update on the schedule for G2 versus Parabellum, and I believe it would have been SSG on the other stream in their game as well. Stay tuned. We'll get you updates on them. Otherwise, we're jumping back into our game that was here on stream just before those issues kicked off, which was Cloud9 versus Mkers. My God, it feels like it's been 84 years, Ace. It's been a good while, but there is a game still to finish. It was 4-1. I don't think you guys saw the 5th round in its entirety. Mkers won. It's 4-1 to Mkers in that case on their, I want to say, attacking half.
Yes, Mkers are attacking. They run rounds 1 to 3, and then Cloud9 managed to pick up a defense in the 4th round.
Oh yeah, Nova.
Nova just went absolutely wild in round number 4 in Blue Bar and Sunrise. Got some unbelievable shots landing from him. But overall, Des, it has been a Mkers game so far on Coastline. They have been dominant. They've been winning gunfights. They've been taking good map control. They've actually looked very, very good as a team.
Extremely convincing, as we've seen from a couple of the air quotes underdog teams here at SI. But on my screens to my left and my right, I can see that we are just loading into the game. So any second now, we will be back on Coastline, and SI can resume as if nothing ever changed. Let's get back into this one, Ace, and see if Mkers can carry on the dominance they had before the pause kicked in. And yes, we were kind enough to let the players out of their chairs. They didn't have to sit there for an hour and a half. Don't worry, guys. And a few people DM me on Twitter like, the players being made to sit there this whole time. I was like, no, of course not.
Of course.
They can go to the toilet, they can get a drink, they can sit in the player lounge, it's okay. It obviously does disrupt them a little bit here, so we'll see actually. The craziest thing to say now would be, yeah, our fortunes turn when a power cut happened. That would be one hell of a story for Cloud9 to turn this map on its head. But up until now, it has been Mkers being dominant. So let's see if for Cloud9 that hour or so break is going to do anything to get them back in the swing of things.
Round number 6 then will be the final defensive round for Cloud9. Here we're going to see them try to hold on to Kitchen and Service. It was a site that they tried to defend back in round 3. They were beaten by Mkers. It's also worth pointing out that Mkers have had a considerable advantage in the entry battle so far. They've been coming in, they've not been overly rushing it, Des. They've been picking up those opening kills at about the 1.5 minute mark. They've been very steady at getting themselves into the map, getting established, building their beachhead, and then moving on from there. Plenty of an intel game, lots of droning going on, and then just collapsing, particularly on those roamers, and finding themselves the early kills. And it's been working for Mkers. They've been able to take full advantage of those numbers.
I'm really nervous there, seeing that spray coming through the soft wall, but fortunately did not connect onto the player who was hovering just behind. But 30 seconds in, as you'd expect, nothing too crazy. Now, I recall from back when we were watching this earlier on, Nova always playing around lobby on the Malusi. You sometimes had, I believe previously it was MV Taylor running the mute playing on the upstairs. It probably changed around a little bit here. Bit of a pseudo, what we call the pseudo mirror window, or a bit of a sticky tape job sort of thing here being thrown together. It isn't a mirror, but it is a shield with a wall opened up so you can still see over the other side. It's looking to help prevent some of the damage that might come through, but damage is going to rain through. Scatto starting things out onto Harper, clearing him out of Theatre, and Mkers have dealt with this so quick every time they've been greeted in Penthouse and Theatre.
Very much the same as I was literally just saying, Des. Coming in about the minute mark, and Mkers get themselves that opening kill. Scatto, as you say, just closing things down there and allowing access into Theatre. Now he's also going to be able to pick up Gemini there and make sure that he gets himself back into the fight. He'll only be on 20 HP, so one bullet from most guns at most distances will do the job. He's going to have to be very careful, and I'm sure being on a kitchen attack, they will want him alive to get that floor opened up, both in Penthouse, which looks down into Service, but also in VIP, which gives you the view down into Kitchen as well. The yellow ping's just coming out there to tell him from his teammates exactly what they want opening up, but they need to be careful. As we've said countless times, those angles work both ways.
They do indeed, and I know that Charles hoping for the longer angle being held off to the far side, that someone steps across, maybe the butt gets a little bit brave in terms of what area the floor is trying to open up, but so far absolutely not the play. The Cloud9 not got themselves into any sticky gunfights, otherwise have kept themselves going. That said, MV Taylor just walked straight into Aquin. You've got to be mindful of these. Earlier on they were losing a couple of members to the back angles, not being aware of someone pushing them from a window or a doorway, and just being taken out clean. Static, bringing one down to Scatter, but the plant is going in as they go into a 2 versus 3. 3. Envy still down on the ground, and here comes the swing. Nova taking another fight, 4 versus 1. Maybe a 3 with Envy on the ground, but this shouldn't be one that the side of Cloud9 loser. May as well call them Nova 9 at this point for all that he has been doing. Either way, this should end the half at 4-2, which you said earlier on, Ace, would be a great half for Cloud9 given how it started.
Yeah, given the performance that we've seen so far and how dominant Mkers have been, 2-4 really isn't the end of the world for Cloud9. What I'd call it is a foundation. It's something to start building on when they move into their attack. It was a good collapse from them. I was a little bit worried at the halfway point. They'd lost that opening kill. Envy Taylor just straight in front of the kitchen window and got himself downed, but ultimately they were able to turn it around, get themselves on top and win that one out. Mkers then 4-2 at the half, going to be heading into round 7, whereby they will go on to the defence. Cloud9, they're going to be attacking hooker and billiards to begin with.
I was curious to see if we get this setup coming out here, and it's actually gone one beyond what I expected. The Lion, the Jackal, as well as, what was that on earlier on they had a second ago? There's something else on there, the Yana, sorry, which I believe might get changed away. In fact, it's held on to. We'll talk more around that in a second when it comes on screen. This round being a lot better, though, I've got to say. I think for the side of Mkers, they had the right idea. They got the vertical control. They busted through Penthouse and Theatre and brought down a man. It was a really good start for them. But as things bled on, even with the mistake from Envy running into a sightline, that's probably happened at least once around so far. They find the crucial kills where they need them and bring themselves up to that 4-2 scoreline. Let's see how the second half plays out. On this side, we're having the Goyo as well as the Alibi coming along, and the Smokes also got a shield. So a lot of shields being deployed here by Mkers. Screams to me we're going to try and see them sitting behind all of this utility, and on the other side, it's going to be the work of Cloud9 to figure out the best way to deal with that.
It looks like there's an extension being built, Des, into Penthouse and Theatre side particularly. And the reason for this from the defenders is basically to prevent access to Penthouse and to VIP. We actually saw that it was something Mkers used on their attack, was getting Sasha into VIP with the ace, opening up the wall with the Selma charge that gives a line of sight all the way through into the billiards table area and just makes it very difficult for the defenders to move around inside. So by playing 1 or 2 defenders inside of the theatre, it just means that the attackers can't push forward into VIP, can't push into luggage and aquarium without first clearing that theatre area, because the big concern is, of course, that you're going to get hit on the flank and shut down in the mid to late rounds. So something Cloud9 will no doubt have to pay attention to early doors here. They've got a lot of utility to play into as well. Mkers have certainly set themselves up to hold this for as long as possible. But 45 seconds in, Cloud9, a steady approach, much like Mkers on the attack.
Being very, very steady. I was going to say it's about the 60-second mark or so that Mkers broke open the Penthouse and Theatre to hold on their attacks and cleared things out. You can see already they've removed the shield, which has forced Gemini to fall back ever so slightly. Akwi still holding on 90 out to the sides. There's some committal from the side of Mkers to try and waste as much time as they can out here to the east. Again, by now, Mkers have broke Cloud9's defense when they were the ones on the defensive half. So we need to see some moves coming forward. There's the move I'm looking for. Envy onto Lolo, taking him out, and that entry kill coming through for Cloud9 in what feels like one of the first times in this game, converted into a second, but they weren't worried about Akwi on 90, who swings out and brings one down. Might find himself pinched on another angle. It's going to be Shile pulling him in the dirt. Mkers punished for their aggressive defense out to the east, and now find themselves in a 4 versus 2.
Akwi unfortunate to lose out on the second man there. If he gets the kill on Shiol into VIP, he's home free and back into the site, and all of a sudden Mkers aren't looking too bad. But that's not how it went, and Cloud9 have got themselves another man advantage here. 4 versus 2 coming in towards the final minute of the round. Sasha, he's undergoing pressure inside of Aquarium, but I tell you what, Des, Harper did not expect that Jack in the Box to come flying out of the door there as the barricade was taken down. A great kill there, and it could be a bit of a momentum shift for Mkers, and you feel like that's just what they need at the minute, is that little bit of aggression, that little bit of power just to move them forward. Now then, the Claymore is cleared out, but Scatter unable to get himself the kill on the run out there. 2 versus 3, 40 seconds to go.
Cloud9 stalling out a little bit here as well. I think just composing themselves. They were in the 4 versus 2 and have now lost a man, which makes the round considerably riskier. You'd think to say here, well, just push as a collective, try and go for the trades if you really want to. They had Charles a second ago looking to push down the main hallway, but he's now dropped down into luggage to push through as well. But Sasha, it's one of those, I'm not stuck in here with you, you're stuck in here with me, because I've got a shotgun trained on the doorway, and as soon as you walk forwards, guess what? It's going to connect with your skull, you're going to find yourself in the dirt. There's one, and like that, Cloud9 have given this round away. They've gone from a 4 versus 2 to a 2 versus nothing. Great clutch up by Mkers, and that's one hell of a way to turn around.
Sasha and Scato take a bow there, showing fantastically well how to play that short-handed situation, and you just knew, Des, they were onto a loser on that single door when you've got that SAS shotgun just primed, pumped and ready to go at such a short distance. It was just really well played by Mkers, forcing them into that CQC situation and giving themselves every possibility, every advantage to win in those gunfights, and it was just click, click, boom, down they went, and the round goes to Mkers 5-2.
Again, some questions I think I'll be asking on Cloud9 side right now. It's the basics where they're falling apart. The initial entry, sure, a bit of time being wasted, that's whatever. It's one of those small things that teams can improve on. But it's more the things in that case like the grenade not connecting behind the bar. That was been a freest kill of their lives if they managed to connect it. The awkward swing outs where it's constant 1v1s onto the man. Sasha playing inside of Aqua. They aren't looking to play through and follow up on trades at the back of that one. Missing out on crucial gunfights. Again, it's not like... I wish we could say we're talking about more advanced concepts here and things that were going wrong, but it does feel like the basics are slipping away and eluding Cloud9 a little bit here. 5-2 to Mkers, 2 more rounds, and they're playing Coastline in quick fashion. We then go through to Clubhouse, which would have been, well, is Cloud9's map pick. A place we know that they're very comfortable. If they can't do it there, Ace, it's lights out and they go home.
Well, you know, that's the point that we're coming down to now. This is not group stages anymore, Des.
No.
You know, we ran over it before, but obviously, you know, we're back into things now, and we've got to remind everybody of what's on the table here. What are the stakes? And that is that we've got 2 teams that have come into this tournament as, I don't like to use the word too much, everybody's earned their place here at Invitational, but we've got to say that these are 2 underdog teams when you come in looking, you know, at potential champions and favourites. But Mkers particularly, Des, have impressed me throughout this. They really have been very, very solid, and they've had some great wins. Cloud9 as well, earning their place here in the playoffs. But we've got to remember that for these 2 teams, one of them is going to find heartbreak at the end of the night, and one of them is going to find elation as they go through to the next playoff stage. It's not going to be easy to say goodbye to either of these teams, but Cloud9, surely they want to go out with a bang if that's how it has to end, Des. You don't want to go out with a whimper like this.
No, I mean, they're being pretty explosive about things right now. The Gon 6 and a concussion used on soft surfaces. The first one on the door, the second on a soft wall. So I'm hoping that there's some kind of acknowledgement here if we don't need all this utility realistically. In fact, there's another Gon 6 on MV Taylor, which has now also been consumed. So they've gone through that. They've gone through the impact coming out of the Sophia, sorry, I completely forgot her name for a second. And that's without really worrying about shields, I don't think. So, a question to be asked around is that they're just trying to pick up the pace a little bit here and stepping aggressive as Scato tries to go for exactly that. But Harper, he was aware and waiting, and he's still waiting for his man to come peeking out. Needs to hope that he's not pinched him from the north at the same time, because Akwi is on the hunt. He's on the prowl. He has no idea that's going to be the easiest kill in the world, as he was so heavily distracted by Scato elsewhere. Lolo scattering static to the wind, 5 versus 3, and it looks like, Tim, they can step up to match point given how comfortable this is looking for the boys.
It certainly does, Mkers. It's becoming very difficult for Cloud9 to break their stride here, Des. It's just everything about this game is moving to the rhythm, to the beat of Mkers' drum. They are just moving through and dictating absolutely everything. They are able to encircle, outmaneuver and just outplay Cloud9 right now. 3 versus 5, and we find ourselves in another one of those lulls where Cloud9 have to take a step back and just think about exactly how to proceed here and what to do. We've seen them have a few good moments, a few good kills, and you just feel if they could string 1 or 2 more together, then maybe they could make more of a map out of this. But Mkers looking very dominant at the moment. Shiol just holding an angle. He sees the man inside the main lobby. He does not get the kill as Lolo manages to find it on the reverse across the courtyard, spilling blood there, and find ourselves now 2 versus 4 as MV Taylor looks to get an aggressive push going in through the service door. Finds a Kui, but obviously that leaves his position well known to the defenders now. And they're not going to overpeak this, Des. There's absolutely no need to. All they're going to do is play behind that utility, send out the smoke canisters, tried a little run out from the main door there. It was unsuccessful. In comes Nova with 1 onto Gemini, 2 onto Sasha, and that leaves us 2 versus 2, but 5 seconds left to go. That's going to be the big enemy here, Des. Envy Taylor is down. Nova has no option but to try and get that diffuser down. He has to come off it as he's approached. It's die or lose to time. Pick your poison, and ultimately he chooses to go for time.
Either way, you're not walking away the winner. That much is guaranteed. Another one of those kind of scattered rounds where, okay, you give away the early deaths and say forget about those. Look at what you've got left to work with in a 3 versus 5. They had the EE1Ds, they had the flashes still available. a lot of that utility used early round for opening up the soft walls, which ultimately doesn't matter all that much, I don't think. But then when it comes around to actually thinking about pushing in, you've got nothing to clear the barbed wire that was impeding MV Taylor. It's, again, the bare basics of, like, you've used all this utility to clear elsewhere around the map, but things like barbed wire are what is slowing you down. Probably questions to ask there around Cloud9, and again, efficiency of use, where the focus is in these rounds, because as it stands, Mkers are just absolutely steamrolling them on Coastline. And Clubhouse looks like we're walking into it with Mkers at match and series point, and ultimately tournament point for Cloud9, as they would be going home if they lose that second map.
Absolutely, and you know, a tough day for APAC is starting to look like a better day for EU. We need it. There's been struggles for the EU teams so far, and it looks like Mkers, they're going to be fighting the fight on behalf of the EU region at the minute. And you know, you can't argue, Des, that this is not the first time we've seen this sort of performance out of them, and I'm sure there's going to be teams going away from this. Even the LATAM teams that are going extremely well at the minute, they're going to be looking at Mkers here and thinking, you know, that is a potential bump in the road. They are a potential problem here, because Mkers really have been able to sort of recognise the weaknesses and adapt very well to counter those and to play into them and take advantage of them.
You know who the winner of this game plays? TSM. TSM plays against the winner of this
I remember a Mkers versus TSM game, Des.
Do you, Tim? How did it go?
I do. Well, it didn't go well for TSM.
Oh, no way. And what that map that was on? Villa. I was messaging you about it last night, I remember. I watched it back, actually, and my God, they had some big brain executes on there. For example, the DKB, which we're seeing being brought along here by MV Taylor, up on the skylight, dropping down 2 smokes into trophy window, and then going for a push off to the side, which netted 2 kills for Mkers against TSM. They looked incredibly good on that map, and I would love to see a best of 3 between those 2 teams. Either that, or it's Cloud9 coming up against TSM. A matchup that we see very commonly in a couple of other esports, so one I'm sure that would stand the test of time and go down in history. Although I'm pretty sure we all know which way that would go. Static starting off things with a kill onto Acqui. Now, is the alibi removed? I imagine the shield was already deployed somewhere on the map, because that has been kind of a big part of the Mkers setup, is having at least 2 shields per round.
A good opening kill there from Static to get things soft on the right foot for Cloud9. You know, I don't want to labour the point, Des, but we have discussed it previously that Cloud9 aren't always the best at following through on that entry kill. At least so far here at SI, they've done extremely well to get in and get themselves the numbers advantage, but not always double down. And you feel it is just that sort of mid-round where they don't seem to, you know, transition very well into the late round and take that power and momentum with them. But right now, they are attacking onto Blue Bar and Sunrise. Gemini is in a very important position, trying to hold down Office on the Maestro at the minute. He's got the Auda there. Static, he's looking to open up some vertical angles down into Sunrise, and that just might move the defenders round a little bit and allow Shayol to take a little bit of advantage here as he finds himself an angle onto the kitchen door.
Well, he's got the angle here, so he could just sit and hold the cross while the rest look to go for a push in through Sunrise, for example. So I'm thinking maybe that's going to be the play. Looks like it is 2 have now dropped on the other side, but immediately Scato and Lolo, their attention turns towards that pool entrance doorway. All they've got to do is sit and wait. This was that death angle that Nova got 2 or 3 kills from in one of the earlier rounds. I believe round 4 it was. So they're going to be all too familiar with the damage that can be done onto the pool entrance doorway. Question is whether or not they can land it, because for Cloud9, that clock is running down. I know you look at it and go, Des, there's still 45 seconds left. What are you on about? With how much they've stalled out so far, it could really come back to bite them.
Well, there's a lot of work to be done as well. They've got themselves into good positions, but now they need to think about exactly how they're going to get in sight and get themselves a diffuser down, and that's how they're going to do it. Des Harper's going to pick up a long-range headshot onto Scato and just clear the man out from the side of Kitchen there. But Lolo has something to say about it, as does Gemini, using the Auda to find the headshot onto Static. 3 versus 3 as Mkers come in and just flip the script once again and manage to level things out, even though they were behind. We have kills going in either direction as Lolo finds Nova, only to be traded out by MV Taylor, who starts to put that diffuser down on the ground. He has to stick this, Des. Shayol with essential cover there with a kill onto Sasha, but we find MV Taylor down. Gemini has done it, Des. He finds the down with the evil eye, the kill with the Auda, moves in, finishes the man with the bailiff. He will disable the active diffuser, and that is Mkers in the driving seat, taking full control of this one after the first map of Coastline.
Oh, spoke about the liberal use from Cloud9 from their destructive projectiles. Again, missing the most crucial thing of all, an evil eye sat inside of sight, staring at the plant position, and with the down coming onto MV Taylor with no idea where he was getting zapped from. That's the kind of beauty that you want in a post plant. To be honest with you, untroubled Mkers is the only way I can describe them outside of Nova. Putting a scare up him a little bit with some god shots coming out of his defensive Sunrise and Blue Bar. Nothing is going to trouble them on that map, I think, barely breaking a sweat. And now they get to go into the realm of Cloud9 on Clubhouse, and they're going to have something to do there.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Static come through and have a reasonably good half when we came back from the short break there, so it wasn't terrible, but they need, coming into map 2, they need Static, they need Nova to have those sorts of performances again, and then they need a few others to step up. This is playoff time, Des. You can't be relying on 1 or 2 players. You need everybody in there chipping in and just really pushing you towards that next round.
Again, I really hate being the kind of hypercritical caster, but for Cloud9, there are so many things I could look at in this game and just go, boys, these are things that you've got right all year long in the APAC League. They never bothered you then. Why is it suddenly such a big issue now where you're on LAN with reduced ping, you're all playing together in the same environment? Maybe it's being on a stage like this is throwing them off, I don't know, but it's definitely not the Cloud9 that we know and love from the APAC League.
It's not, and Cloud9 are a team that have got a lot of experience. We expect them to come into this sort of situation and thrive, essentially. They've been there before, they know exactly what it's about. That's not characteristic, I'd have to say, of the sort of performance we're normally used to seeing from them. But let's hope, Des, that it's a blip of a map. Teams have them, they've come in, they've just not got to grips with it against Mkers. Mkers have had a good read on them, they've played very well. I don't want to just put it down to mistakes from Cloud9. We have to say that it's very, very good play from Mkers as well. So let's hope coming in we see a more competitive map 2.
Clean, clear and clinical for Mkers, a little bit cloudy for Cloud9. No doubt a few things to talk about in the break, and hopefully they come back competitive for Clubhouse. APAC is done. They are out of the tournament. Let's go to a quick break. When we come back, our analysts will break it down ahead of Clubhouse.